Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, February 3rd. If you're just tuning in, we just finished going over the Luka Doncic trade, the trade that sends Luka to the Lakers at just 25 years old. Wild stuff. In this segment, we turn our attention to the other major trade that took place this weekend. De'Aaron Fox gets his wish. He now gets to play in San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama. We'll talk about that trade, what led up to it, what each team got, and who won that trade. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, February 3rd. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the De'Aaron Fox trade, the other massive trade that was way overshadowed by the news just a couple of hours before them. De'Aaron Fox wanted out of Sacramento, and he wanted out to a very specific location. De'Aaron Fox wanted to go and to play with Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs, and I think that is a very, very smart decision for his career. First of all, Victor Wembanyama needed a guard, but the fact that they were able to get this done so quickly is really cool to see as well. The Kings, of course, wanted to keep him, but when they could tell that they weren't going to sign him, the fact that they were able to get some stuff back, they were able to get some assets, a bunch of picks back, is huge. So let's talk about what they did get. It's a 3-team trade involving the Chicago Bulls, and we'll start off with those Bulls. The Chicago Bulls traded away Zach LaVine and a couple of other pieces in exchange. The Bulls got back Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 pick. That pick had protections on it, so basically they get a couple of depth players, a couple of solid players back for Zach LaVine, and they get their own. They get rid of that protection. They get their own pick back this year, regardless of what happens down the stretch here, which is good for them because now they don't have to worry about potentially losing a pick that's going to be very important for their future. So the Bulls, despite giving up a little bit here, they did a pretty good job of not getting fleeced in this deal, right? They obviously didn't get the biggest piece of the pie here, but they got their first-round pick back, and they got a couple pieces that I think could be solid contributors to a team if they can get it going in the right direction. Starting off with the Spurs here, obviously they get the big piece of the puzzle. They get De'Aaron Fox. They also get Jordan McLaughlin. Just another one of those bench pieces. Really, one of the big one here is that De'Aaron Fox. And that fit with him, Victor Wembanyama, and Chris Paul is going to be really cool to see. One of the things that people have been asking for, and one of the things that I think has been pretty good this season, is the combination of Victor Wembanyama and an elite guard, or formerly elite guard, I should say, in Chris Paul. And Chris Paul's been good. He just hasn't been, 10 years ago Chris Paul, although no one was expecting him to do that. Him getting a running mate, a lead guard over there in De'Aaron Fox that can facilitate and hit those shots, be able to stretch out a defense and get the ball down in the post to Victor Wembanyama so he doesn't have to be a superhero to get this team to 500. Is going to be huge. Getting a guy that won Clutch Player of the Year just a few seasons ago is going to be huge for the future of this team. And the fact that he wanted to go there, I think, is a really good sign. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama is just in his second year as an NBA player. He's already continued to show amazing signs of growth. He's going out there and he's found his way into conversations like a top 10 player in the league. He's found his way onto his all-star team for the first time of his career. He's a reserve there. He'll find his way up to potentially being a starter if he can ever surpass Jokic in the West. That's a tough ask for them, though. Seeing that combination between De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama is going to be really cool. Again, The big thing that I think is really important to notice here is the fact that De'Aaron Fox specifically asked to go to the Spurs, and they were able to get it done without really mortgaging too much of the future. And that's one of the key things that happened in both of these trades, which the winners, or the guys getting the bigger piece there, didn't really have to mortgage much of the future. The Lakers only had to give up one first-round pick. They only had to give up a 31 going on 32-year-old AD. The Spurs only had to give up 3 first-round picks, 4 first-round picks. None of them are going to be particularly great. One of them is going to turn into 2 seconds this season when the Hornets find their way into the lottery. One of them is going to be that pick of the Spurs in 2027 that, in theory, shouldn't be very good. And then you have a 2031 Timberwolves pick that, with Anthony Edwards over there, as long as he's still there in 2031, which I guess you never really know, they shouldn't be expecting too much out of these trades, right? Out of these picks. So they didn't have to give up too much. They didn't give up too many big assets, and I think they did a really good job in finding a guard of the future. But Fox wanted to go there, which means other players are going to want to go there. Fox found his way in early. That's going to be a duo that, if they click, that's going to be the one that's going to be wrecking the West over the next 10, 15 years, and I'm very excited to see how it goes. I love the speed that Fox plays with. I love his ability to get to his spots, find the open man, and hit those shots that he needs to. Again, former clutch player of the year over in Sacramento during the Beam year when it first started back in 2021, I believe. That is huge for this team. The fact that players want to go there. But what it really means here for the Kings, I think, is interesting. The Kings have always been a destination that is hard to get players to go to. Sacramento has not been a very successful team for long stretches. They had one of the longest playoff droughts in the in all 4 major American sports not too long ago, before De'Aaron Fox was able to lead them past it. They chose De'Aaron Fox over Tyrese Halliburton, who's now having a good time over there in Indiana with the Pacers. They were able to get Domantas Sabonis there. They built a nice little crew. They had DeMar DeRozan back this season. They're able to now reunite Zach LaVine with DeMar DeRozan, former Bulls teammates over there, and they played pretty good together. Zach LaVine is having himself a pretty solid season. They were also able to get those 3 first-round picks that we talked about that probably aren't going to be that great, and 3 seconds. Those are assets they can use to continue to build around this team. This is a team that's kind of in no man's land. They're not too old to blow it up and say we should blow it all up right now, right? But they're also not so young that you should say we need to give it time. This is a team that, with their current players in their current window, the Kings need to go into win now mode. They've got the assets to do it with these trades. The question is, what is out there? Is it a potentiality for them to go and make a trade for Jimmy Butler, the last big name that's out there? This was a trade deadline that was promising to be one of the more quiet ones after Jimmy Butler has made his whole situation pretty hard to get out of, turning down a deal to go to the Warriors after he said he wasn't going to sign an extension there. Maybe the Kings can work something out with him, with the Heat, trading some of those first-round picks they got to go out and grab another player, at least for a short-term investment in Jimmy Butler. They've got to figure out what direction they're going in, because right now the Kings just kind of chill in no man's land. They got rid of their franchise guy. It's not something you can't recover from because they still have some talent, but they need to decide, are they going all in now, or are they just going to say, screw it, we're done, we're building for the future, we're tanking now, we're getting rid of all of our guys? Both of those are completely valid options for this team. If they wanted to start to sell, they've got a bunch of guys they could sell. They've got Sabonis, who's been really good, one of the more underrated players in the NBA. They just got Zach LaVine, who they could maybe flip. He's having a really efficient year, shooting over 40% from 3. And he's healthy right now. Still 29, still not even 30. He's been a piece the Bulls have tried to move off of for a while and have not been able to with his massive contract. And they have DeMar DeRozan, who they also brought in this offseason. These are all guys that you could probably move, not for the whole world, but at least for a little bit. Get you set up for a pretty solid rebuild. or you can, like I said, build around them for a little bit right now. These guys, championship window, if that's what we're going to call it with this Kings team, isn't really that long. You have Zach LaVine, who injury history is hard to trust as a number one. Domantas Sabonis is a guy that you could build around for a while, but he's not a guy that you really feel comfortable as a true number one guy. And DeMar DeRozan never really was that true number one guy on a championship team. He's always been a number two, a really good number two, but you've got a lot of number twos over there. If you can go out and get a number one, this team could be really good. Again, in a very, very deep West, it's going to be tough to figure out how this goes, but the Kings have options here. The Kings have plenty of options, and for a guy that they knew wasn't going to come back, they were able to get him where he wanted to go, which is really cool as an organization. It always is when the organization is like, you know what, you want to go here, we'll listen to you, even when they don't have that no trade clause, even when they don't have that we're going to force your hand kind of option. It's good when an organization does right by their players, and I think it's going to be able. That's that kind of move that's going to make it more attractive for free agents and other players to come to Northern California, come to Sacramento in the future, as opposed to down in North Texas with what the Dallas Mavericks just did. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on these trades. Again, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, trade news is not done. The NFL is having its own trade drama right now. Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.